Albion, a land of powerful magic, whimsical adventure, and ancient history. Over the ages, this region was home to many iconic and terrifying creatures, battles, and personalities. Yet, as each age came to an end and generations passed, nature reclaimed once iconic structures, and moments of significance faded from history as memories faded and historical documents were lost. There was, however, one person, or should I say, entity, who sought to enslave the population of Albion and burn all that resided on it to the ground. After this defeat, even centuries later, the citizens still all knew of his name. An enemy of Albion, shrouded in as much mystery as he was unmatched in power and chaos. Who was this so-called hero of heroes? What led him to wage war against Albion? And what was his ultimate fate? In this video, we traverse the mystical land of Albion as we explore the lore and story behind the true embodiment of evil, Jack of Blades. Now, where do we begin this tale? Well, at the start. Many millennia ago, the stunning land of Albion was nothing more but a blur of fire and demons. The land here had felt only the tread of colossal titans and nightmares. There were no humans, just chaos, magic, and destruction. From a separate dimension, the Void, a space within the Netherworld, the demonic entities of the court watched the carnage. The Queen of Blades, the Knight of Blades, and the Jack of Blades themselves were already ancient in comparison to the chaotic landscape of the mortal realm they observed. From their timeless realm, the court watched over centuries as the demons of Albion died out, the scorched land sprouted luscious forests, and the rivers of fire turned into babbling brooks. Fae filled the forest land, trolls rose from the mud, and Kraken conquered the 9 seas. Each creature was either a surviving demon of the fall or a descendant adapted through evolution. It was during this period that humanity also rose. In this early time of Albion, humanity lived in balance with the magical, mystical, and often dangerous threats around them, and as they expanded their reach, formed villages and explored the land in an attempt to understand what had come before them, they ushered in an age of tranquility and beauty. Unknown to them, however, not all of the Ancient Ones had left. From the Void, the court looked down on Albion and its new population with envy. They wanted the land for themselves and the worship of its inhabitants. From their netherworld, the Queen, Knight, and Jack of Blades introduced themselves as higher beings to the people of Albion. The court saw these humans as creatures who had infested the land and demanded their worship. To their surprise, the humans did not submit and refused this simple request. In response, the court displayed to these lesser beings just what they were capable of. The land filled with fire, and skies burned with smoke until only the crisp remnants of the human structures remained. Weakened and in awe of their power, humanity still stood strong. When they refused the court's second request, the demons lifted the oceans into the sky and flooded the world, and yet humanity remained strong-willed. It was only when the court used their chaotic magic and twisted the minds of the inhabitants that they finally fell. In a time where brother slew brother, parent abandoned child, and friend turned against friend, humanity finally accepted defeat and bowed down to the new gods of the Void. For some time, humanity lived in fear and servitude under the Queen, Knight, and Jack of Blades in an age of terror. From his throne in the Void, Jack of Blades watched over Albion with an ancient, ornate sword at his side. The Sword of Aeons was as mysterious as the court themselves, and it appeared to be alive in some sense. It had been claimed by this entity and was responsible for at least some of Jack's mighty power. Albion was desperate for change, and in a small village, the son of a humble blacksmith appeared to possess abilities no human had before. Abilities only seen used by the court. This was a problem. The court saw how young William Black amazed the people around him with his powers of will. Abilities of skill, magic, and strength he used to defend his village against bandit attacks alone. For Jack, he saw this as an opportunity to increase his own power. William vowed to defeat the court and free Albion from their brutal reign, and to do this, he researched as much as he could about them. One night, as he read through an ancient tome, William found himself suddenly in the void, and before him, he saw Jack on his throne, the glow of the Sword of Aeons, and an audience of ghastly creatures. The sword hungered for a soul, and Jack intended to use it to enslave the empowered human. In this confrontation, the demon unleashed a savage blow, but William eluded the strike with speed and fled the void with the very blade William meant to bind him with. Back in Albion, the newly freed Sword of Aeons spoke to William and told him that it could actually help him beat the entities of the court, but only if he offered his soul in bondage. A deal he agreed to. In doing so, William's soul entered the sword, and the two became one. Over the following weeks, William Black and the Sword of Aeons took on the court at the peak of Mount Ruon. The knight was the first to fall, its body shattered upon impact with the sword. The next to appear was Jack. Without his sword, he fought the best he could, but he suffered the same fate as the knight. However, Jack's soul escaped back to the void, and within, in his weakened state, he watched as the queen fell. This human had taken on the court, and against all odds, succeeded. As Jack recovered, heavily weakened, he watched from his realm as everything changed. William Black, the hero of Albion, was crowned their king, and from him, 1,000 years of peace began. The Archon's children were blessed with his abilities, and a whole kingdom became reliant on magic. Cities were built in a week, and across the land of this grand kingdom, 4 hubs were constructed, focus points of pure magic. Yet, over generations, without an enemy to vanquish, the Archon's children became cruel and petty towards those without heroic gifts. Disgusted by the actions of his bloodline, William Black the Archon simply disappeared with the sword and left his children to their fate. One evening, a wish was made in the magical structure of the spire. In a flash, the kingdom fell. But that is a story for another day. The fall of the Kingdom of Albion was tragic. Although the villages and hamlets outside of the wall survived, they entered a new era, one of desperation and misery. Each area fell into isolation, gates were sealed, and food, livestock, and even fresh water was seen as luxuries. In these dark times, forests grew over the remnants of the fallen kingdom, ancient artifacts were sold, and constant bandit attacks pushed many to believe this was the end. Yet, through wars and death, one man appeared and changed everything, a hero called Scythe. To the population, he appeared to be a very powerful hero, but very few knew of his true identity, William Black. The fall of the Old Kingdom had taken with it the history of what the world once was, knowledge of William's epic battle against the court and the rise of heroes, and even the name Jack of Blades. The corruption of William's descendants had led to the fall of an entire kingdom, and he wanted to make it right. Under his direction, Scythe guided a hero, Nostro, to unite the land. To do this, Nostro sought out every hero of will, skill, and strength in Albion and brought them to one place, a guild that could work together to heal the land and restore its wounds. For some time, the Heroes Guild worked with the population and Albion began to feel like a safe place again. But as there always is in tales of good and evil, even the Guild of Heroes entered a period of corruption. Nostro fell to the allure of a power-hungry courtesan, and under her influence, the guild turned into nothing more than a house of mercenaries driven by lust and fame. Frustrated, Scythe decided to disappear again. One of his children had failed him. This time, he chose not to take his sword with him, he chose to hide it. The Sword of Aeons was incredibly powerful, and the person who held it could rule Albion. William knew this land better than anyone. Its mysteries, arcane secrets, and lost regions. Aware of what it meant to wield the sword, he placed it in the most secure place in Albion, the Guild of Heroes, but it would not be easy to find there. Scythe set up a series of complicated rituals that relied not only on someone with incredible magical abilities, but also the blood of his direct bloodline. After the fall of the Old Kingdom, very few existed. To reveal the sword in the Chamber of Fate, a person had to activate the 4 ancient focus sites across Albion with a key. This key, the Septimal Key, he hid away in an abbey in Hook Coast, and to access this key, someone had to firstly know where it was, secondly have a member of his direct bloodline with them, and finally know the details of a magical ritual to reveal it. These steps ensured that, if anything, only a member of William's bloodline would be able to retrieve the Sword of Aeons, and as his soul was within the sword itself, to unlock its power, the blood of at least one of his descendants had to be spilled. With the sword secured, Scythe left once again. Legends say that it was in the freezing northern wastes that Jack of Blades first appeared in Albion. Yet, those who saw him had no idea who or what he truly was, as all history and knowledge of the court had faded over time. He wore a crimson hood, metal armor, and his face was hidden away by a white mask. He amazed those around him with his powers of skill, will, and strength, but he was not a hero. He was not even a man. He was a demon, a master of manipulation, evil incarnate. The unfortunate hero who had discovered the mask had been tricked by the entity to put it on, and in that moment, their body became an unwilling vessel for this parasitic entity. The only part of Jack's true form could be seen in his eyes, blood red and insidious. On his waist, Jack held 2 other masks. While not confirmed, it is possible that these belonged to the Knight and Queen. Unfortunately for them, their souls had shattered during their defeat. Jack had finally recovered after his battle thousands of years before with the humble William Black, and after the fall of the kingdom and the disappearance of Scythe, Jack wanted his revenge. He wanted his sword back, and he wanted Albion to burn. Generations turned like pages of an ancient tome. The Heroes Guild grew, and so did Albion. The guild was eventually overthrown by a group of will users who returned this compound to the goal it had been established to do. They wanted to help Albion to heal it. To do this, they set up a code with rules. In this age of heroes, a citizen of Albion could request the aid of a hero for a payment. In return, the hero would complete the quest, follow it to the letter, and obey law enforcement while doing so. As the heroes performed quests on behalf of the guild all across the land, peace returned to Albion. The heroes were good and were here to help. Cities grew, villages expanded, and new hamlets formed. Heroes became celebrities and their actions were spoken about by the masses. There was one name, however, that popped up frequently. From Knottle Glade to Bowerstone to Oakvale, the population spoke of Jack of Blades. He was responsible for the slaughter of Ishmar. He had torched the White Lodge, slayed Kyrus the Dragon, and was essential in the Battle of Bloody Harvest. They said he had the strength of 10 heroes, but nobody knew his true face, for he wore a mask. To some, he became a legend, an immortal hero of power. To others, he became a monster in the night who stalked children who misbehaved. As generations passed, their tales continued of his achievements, but Jack continued to live as the population died. To some, they believed him to be a mortal of true power and wisdom, when in reality, the truth was so much darker. Each time Jack's human vessel began to fall weak to age, he sought out a younger hero to inhabit, and as the cycle continued, he stole their lives and actions from them as he searched for the Sword of Aeons. Dozens of heroes wore the mask of Jack over the years, each one transformed into an empty vessel for the entity to control, each one used to further his plans. On one occasion, as Jack wandered one of the many ruins of the Old Kingdom to secure information about the Archon and the Sword, he was attacked by a group of will users. In response to their silly opposition, he cursed them with eternal torment, forced into a state between life and death, left only to scream in their suffering, in which only when they fed on the life force of the living or tortured the souls of the dead in the netherworld were they given a moment of peace. Of course, the locals knew these entities only as screamers and did not know how they had been made. To Jack's luck, it was not only he who sought to explore and understand the mysteries of the Old Kingdom and the Archon who had ruled it. Many historians and archaeologists entered these ancient, dangerous regions and documented their findings for the rest of Albion to read, information that Jack could use. Jack's time in Albion not only allowed him access to Old Kingdom ruins and information about them, but it also offered him the opportunity to plant seeds to acquire allies and land. During the height of the Age of Heroes, in the northern freezing region of Hook Coast, Jack took on a quest with 2 other heroes of the guild. The coastal town had been plagued by Balverines, and 3 heroes tracked them down to a local forest. However, what they found was tragic. The creatures had torn apart 2 villagers, and their son had seen it all. In silent horror, Maze watched Jack of Blades dispatch the Balverines in a ruthless display of power before turning his crimson gaze upon the other 2 heroes. In this moment, Jack looked down at Maze and saw his potential, for he had a unique, strong connection to will energy, something the demon could use. Jack allowed the child to live, but he made his presence strong in Maze's life. As the child grew and joined the Heroes Guild and later competed in the Witchwood Arena, he became one of Albion's most powerful will users, and later took on a position as leader of the Heroes Guild. For all his renown, Maze remained in moral chains, bound by a debt he could not fully repay. In time, he became little more than a pawn advancing Jack's shadowy schemes. It was during this period that Jack seized another opportunity to claim another pawn. The largest and most influential town in Albion was Bowerstone, central to trade routes, education, sales, and influence. The Grey family governed this town, and the mayor had two daughters, the oldest, Amanda, and the youngest, Elvira. Elvira Grey was different. She was twisted and corruptible. She sought power and control, and Jack sensed this within her. On a visit to the Grey House just off of Barrowfields, Jack suggested that she could maybe be mayor of Bowerstone one day. The issue was that her sister was next in line as the oldest, but if Amanda maybe just disappeared, then she could get all that she wanted. After this meeting, under Jack's corruptible influence, Elvira locked her sister in the family cellar and left her to die. With this action, Jack gained not only another pawn in his plan in the form of Lady Grey when she became mayor, but was also granted his own power over Bowerstone and the surrounding regions, one in particular being Bargate Prison, a place to store those who opposed him. Over his time in Albion, Jack had gathered reputation, support, and power, not through brute force, but corruption and influence. Meanwhile, a book was published by an Old Kingdom historian that captured his attention. The Bloodline spoke of the Archon, the remnants of the fallen kingdom scattered across Albion, and most interestingly, a sword, Jack's stolen sword. The author believed that there were survivors of the Archon's bloodline who still walked Albion to this very day, that they held an ancient power in their veins, a power directly connected to the Sword of Aeons. Because of their direct connection to this bloodline, they would likely be a powerful hero, one of legend, and there was one who appeared to fit the signs. The author did not say who she was, but they did say that this hero had settled down and had two children, first a daughter and then a son, each of which also became a part of this bloodline with ancient power in their veins. To Jack, this was all he needed. A direct connection to William was everything, and with his connections, it did not take him long to track down the family written about in the Bloodline. Deep in the forests of Albion lay the small town of Oakvale, unchanged by time and untouched by the sword. Led by the abomination that was Jack of Blades, Maze and a group of local bandits stormed the hamlet without warning. When they reached the final house, Jack murdered Brom, the husband of the heroic arena champion Scarlet Robe. Weakened during this raid and unable to fight back against Jack, she was beaten and dragged away. Her blood and knowledge was exactly what he wanted. Their daughter, Teresa, was questioned by the demon personally, and when she could not answer his question about the whereabouts of her brother, he cut out her eyes. Despite the failure to secure the boy, Jack left the chaos with Scarlet and travelled to Bargate Prison. In her cell, he told her that he wanted the Sword of Aeons and the knowledge was in her very bloodline. Scarlet knew exactly what he was after. She knew how powerful it was and the consequences of what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands, so she refused. Over the next 10 years, Jack subjected Scarlet to torture, mind games, and mental manipulation. He told her that her husband, son, and daughter were dead. Meanwhile, he used his power to control an ancient kraken just as an extra layer of security in the tunnels below the prison. Eventually, Scarlet spilled. She disclosed that a key was needed to unlock the sword from its hiding place. However, she refused to tell him where this septimal key was. The key itself unlocked and activated the ancient focus sites of will. he just needed to know where the key was. Meanwhile, Jack was informed that an archaeologist had dedicated his time to the focus sites and asked that Maze retrieve him. However, when the archaeologist found out that his hiding spot inside of a demon door had been compromised, he fled and went into hiding. But still, it did not stop the demon from hunting him down with his minions. Although Jack had told Scarlet that her husband and children had died, this was just another one of his nasty tricks. Her husband had been slain by Jack himself, but her daughter, Teresa, had escaped to the woods and become a powerful seeress, a gift granted through the ancient power in her blood. As for her son, he had joined the Heroes Guild, trained under Maze, and even reunited with his sister. To further his plan to break Scarlet, Jack planned to force a meeting between himself and the bright, young hero. Over on the island of Witchwood, Jack watched as the hero followed in his mother's footsteps and fought in the mighty arena. Round through round, he defeated every foe with the help of another hero, Whisper. To the leaders of the Witchwood arena, they were honored that the Jack of Blades had come to visit, and when he requested to make a speech, they were more than happy to comply. After the completion of the 8th round, Jack introduced himself and offered both the young hero and Whisper an opportunity. One more round, a fight to the death. To him, the arena was all that was great in Albion, a place of pain and torture. The young hero and Whisper did fight in this additional round, and the hero won, but whether he did kill Whisper is known only to those who attended. Despite his choice, the hero of Oakvale left with his head held high, and as he walked through the Hall of Heroes, a monument of victors past, he saw a statue of his mother and broke down. In this moment of vulnerability, Jack, the master of manipulation, told him that Scarlet was very much alive. She did, however, now live in solitude, crushed by her failure to save her family. If the hero were to maybe visit her and bring along his sister, that would lift her spirits. Before he left, Jack also asked the hero to keep the champion seal with him, a trophy of grand honor for completing the arena. Yet, Jack had another motive. He had enchanted it to track the hero's movements, actions, and voice. He listened intently as the hero met up with his sister at the Grey House, how Teresa explained how he was the one who had torn apart their family and cut out her eyes, and of how she had seen with her gift that their mother was imprisoned by Jack in Bargate Prison, and only she knew how to access the Sword of Aeons. With a new plan in place, Jack simply waited. He watched and listened as the hero broke into his prison, released his prisoner, and fled through the tunnels. It was only then that he revealed himself and put them both in cells. Over the next year, Scarlet endured not only her torture, but the torture of her son. It was this that finally broke her, and she revealed where the key was: an abandoned abbey in Hook Coast. Finally, with the information he had sought after for years, Jack left the prison and ordered Maze to summon the key. The wizard was able to not only find the specific location, but his research into arcane rituals also gave him an idea of what he needed: a member of the Archon's direct bloodline and his magical ability. To help him, Jack even summoned screamers to scare away any who may interrupt the ritual. But even with these precautions, the ritual was interrupted by the hero of Oakvale after his escape from Bargate. To Jack, however, this was a welcome intrusion. With two members of the ancient bloodline, Maze was able to complete the ritual faster, and with it, before his malevolent red eyes, the septimal key appeared. In preparation for the final part of the ritual, aware of the location of the Sword of Aeons, Jack of Blades ordered Maze to take both Teresa and the hero to the Chamber of Fate. Their blood would feed the sword when he finally held it in his hands. Everything Jack had done was for a reason. The murders, manipulation, terror, and chaos, all to get back his sword, his connection to immense power that had been stolen by William Black thousands of years before. One by one, Jack travelled to the focus site of Albion and activated them. From Witchwood to Greatwood Lake to Hob Cave and finally Gibbet Woods, each room glowed, the orbs levitated and the air crackled with magic as the sky turned red. The guild dispatched heroes to stop him, but they were met only with his wrath. As always, the young hero of Oakvale was never too far behind him, but he was too late. Maze had been ordered to take this nuisance to the Chamber of Fate, but he had failed. Regardless, Jack would have killed the wizard anyway, as his usefulness had come to an end. Each person was a pawn, nothing more. The activation of each site, the completion of this long ritual finally unlocked the Sword of Aeons, and to collect it, Jack entered the Guild of Heroes, and with everything he had laid waste and ruin to all in his way. The guild burned in his wrath, and the hero struggled to match his power. They fell one by one. As Jack entered the Chamber of Fate, he saw it, the Sword of Aeons, his lost weapon. Step by step, he walked towards it and finally held it in his hands. Below him, his magic encased Teresa in a force field, and in his arm, he prepared to spill the blood of Scarlet. And he did, just as the hero of Oakvale entered the chamber. In doing so, the ancient power from the spilled blood unlocked the full power of the sword, and he saw what was to come. Albion in ruins and the population in servitude to him. But before he could do that, he just had to take out the hero who had stalked him through Albion and his seer sister. With the full power of the Sword of Aeons, Jack levitated and unleashed wave after brutal wave as he summoned creatures to aid him in this battle. Yet, just as he had done with William all of those years before, the demon underestimated his opponent. With a brutal strike from the human, Jack fell hard, and below him a vortex opened. Just enough for his soul to escape, a parallel to his previous battle. Once again lost in the void, Jack sought another way to return to Albion. Meanwhile, back in the Chamber of Fate, the hero of Oakvale picked up Jack's empty mask as a trophy. As for the sword, the hero had a choice to make. To either keep it and slay his own sister for her blood to power it, or to drop it into the void to be lost forever in the darkness. Canonically, the sword was tossed into the vortex, lost forever. And so, the hero's triumph was complete, and Albion was free from the dark shadow Jack had cast long before. Yet, this was not the end of Jack's tale. From the netherworld dimension of the void, Jack found himself within Archon's Folly, a mystical and terrifying region of horrors and demons sealed away from the rest of Albion by a large bronze gate in the northern wastes. Jack had not returned in the form of man, but in the shell of a large dragon. Many have speculated why this is so. Many believe this to have been Jack's original form, sealed away. However, the ancient Snowspire Oracle claimed he had used what remained of Scarlet's blood and the power inside of it to feed and form a new colossal shell. The horrors of this region had been sealed away by the Archon himself, and only those willing to perform another one of those pesky rituals could unlock the large gate. Even still, in this modern age, the locals of the village of Snowspire feared it and what lay behind. Jack just had to trick the human population once again into opening the gate. With his power of corruption and manipulation, the entity tapped into an ancient dormant power and awoke the summoners. It would just take time for another plan to form. 1 year after the defeat of Jack of Blades, the guild was informed of a rising evil in the north, but they did not know what the evil was. It was only when the hero of Oakvale travelled there and completed the ritual that he discovered the new form of Jack. As always, Jack had played the hero as a puppet on a string. He taunted him and thanked him for his help. Without the completion of the ritual, there was no way to escape, but to truly leave this place, the hero had to die. In an epic battle between dragon and human, Jack and the hero fought, but once again, the Dragon Jack fell to the hero's mighty blows. It appeared that fate always leaned on the side of the ancient heroic bloodline, and at this time, the hero held out Jack's mask to capture his soul before it escaped. In this form, Jack was powerless, and as he had done to countless hero hosts in the past, he attempted to persuade his nemesis to put on the mask. Together, as one, they could rule Albion and have everyone bow at their feet. They could be immortal and the gods would envy their power. These sweet promises and manipulations were tempting, but in one final action, the hero launched the mask of Jack of Blades with his soul into the fiery lava, and with it, both the mask and the soul burned until nothing was left. This marked the final death of the malevolent, insidious, and manipulative Jack of Blades. Albion celebrated this victory, and the hero of Oakvale went down in history as a legend amongst all other heroes for his part in his defeat. However, in other parts of Albion, the Cult of Blades was established, a small group who saw Jack as a god, an idol. This was only a small cult, but the worship of Jack spread slowly in the shadows. A young man by the name of Fred Barrow from a broken home discovered one of these shadows. With a small cult rising, one had to ask, Jack of Blades was truly dead, right? The mighty battle between the hero of Oakvale and Jack of Blades would be spoken about for centuries. Another grand tale of good versus evil in the magical land of Albion. But was that battle actually the end of Jack? Well, years after the death of the demon, the village of Oddwood was overtaken by a group of bandits, and their leader claimed to be the ferocious Jack of Blades. In reality, young Fred Barrow had taken on the role of his idol in an effort to raid towns and earn gold from the terrified villagers. Yet, it was when an adventurer by the name of Zyro appeared that everything changed. He freed the town from the bandits and killed Fred in the process, but their exchange was interesting. Zyro knew Fred was not Jack. He also spoke about humans as if they were nothing, lessers, just creatures. In Fred's last moments, he believed Jack of Blades had returned in the form of Zyro, but he would never have the chance to tell anyone. Having freed the town, Zyro left and was never heard of again. Some believe him to have been Jack in a new form, while others believed this tale of Oddwood to be another tale told to children who misbehaved. Regardless, even centuries later, the tales of Jack of Blades spread terror into the hearts of the population of Albion. Even so, Jack was just one of the land's ancient entities. It has been so long since I've covered Fable, and I wanted to come back with a big topic with a lot of story and lore to cover. Albion and the land of Fable is absolutely one of my favourite places to explore. Jack of Blades is one of the most iconic villains in video game history, and through several games, in-game books, the Tales of Albion website, and the Jack of Blades short story by Peter David, we were given a very well-rounded and terrifying villain. Tales of Albion did retcon information that had already been established in the series, so I went with that information. Mostly about Jack's origin as a part of the court, instead of his true form always having been a dragon. Also, if you are interested in more Fable, I would highly recommend the Jack of Blades book by Peter David. Sadly, it is not available in paper, but the Kindle version is very easy to get. There was a lot of information to put into this, and there were still little bits of lore I could just not place. It is implied that Jack visited the Snowspire Oracle for information, and in Fable 2, I believe in Fairfax Gardens, a demon door claims that Jack tried to get inside. I am hoping the algorithm picks this up because I would love to cover more Fable lore properly. Years ago, I made a bunch of very short lore videos, but having grown a little over the years, I feel like I can absolutely dive so much deeper. That was everything I wanted to say. If you enjoyed this video, then I would love you to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you did not, and let me know what you thought in the comments below. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Queen Arby, Lewis, Oren X, Drakey Phoenix, Dano Cal Drawings, 501st Clone Boy, Ruben Mendoza, Imperial Embers, Canifex, Jimsy, Average Soul, Azu, Jonas, Yali Rodriguez, and Detroit. What did you think of this topic? Do you think we will see Jack of Blades in the Fable reboot in some form? And what would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back soon for a new one.